The world awoke to headlines of Ukraine's largest and most coordinated strike of the war. Newsrooms buzzed with urgency as details emerged, and social media lit up with footage and eyewitness accounts. For many, it was a moment that redefined the scale and intensity of the conflict. A night of fire and fury saw drones targeting Russian military assets in Crimea and deep inside Russia. The darkness was pierced by the glow of explosions as precision strikes lit up the sky, leaving military installations ablaze and sending shockwaves across the region. Ukraine is no longer just defending, it is retaliating with overwhelming force. The days of merely absorbing attacks are over. Now Ukraine is taking the fight to its aggressor, demonstrating a new level of military capability and resolve. This was a direct response to Russia's relentless bombardment of Ukrainian cities. For months, civilians have endured air raid sirens and the devastation of their homes. Ukraine's answer was swift and unmistakable, a message that every act of aggression would be met with consequences. Instead of breaking Ukraine, Russia's aggression has forged a weapon of precision and resolve. Ukrainian forces, once underestimated, have become a formidable adversary, adapting quickly and harnessing new technologies to strike back. The strikes were a promise fulfilled. Every Russian missile hitting a Ukrainian home would be answered tenfold. This was not just about retaliation, but about deterrence, sending a clear signal that Ukraine would not be cowed into submission. The battlefield now stretches from the Black Sea to Russia's industrial heartland. No longer confined to the front lines, the conflict has expanded, touching regions once thought to be out of reach and forcing Russia to confront vulnerabilities deep within its own territory. Imagine the coordination. Hundreds of drones converging on targets, evading sophisticated air defenses. This operation required months of planning, intelligence gathering, and technological innovation, showcasing Ukraine's growing prowess in modern warfare. This was a technological and psychological masterpiece designed to sow chaos and inflict maximum damage. Russian military bases were thrown into disarray, with commanders scrambling to assess the scale of the destruction and restore order. The message is clear. Nowhere is safe. For the first time, Russian civilians experienced the fear and uncertainty that has haunted Ukrainians for so long as air raid sirens wailed and city streets emptied in panic. The illusion of a distant, contained operation is shattered for the Russian people. The war, once a far-off event, has arrived at their doorstep, challenging the narrative of invulnerability and forcing a national reckoning. Images from Crimea and Russia show massive infernos and collapsed buildings. The scale of destruction is unprecedented, with military warehouses reduced to rubble and critical infrastructure left in ruins. This operation marks a significant escalation, a paradigm shift in the war's dynamics. Analysts warn that the conflict has entered a new, more dangerous phase, with both sides now capable of striking far beyond the front lines. Ukraine has shown it can strike back with devastating effect. The world has witnessed a display of ingenuity and determination as Ukrainian forces leverage every available resource to turn the tide of war. The question now is not if Russia will respond, but how. Military leaders in Moscow are under immense pressure to retaliate, weighing their options as the stakes grow ever higher. This was more than revenge. It was a calculated move to change the war's course. Ukrainian commanders are thinking several steps ahead, aiming not just to punish, but to reshape the strategic landscape in their favor. The world watches, holding its breath. Governments and citizens alike are bracing for what comes next, aware that the repercussions of this escalation could ripple far beyond the region. The new reality is unfolding before our eyes. As the dust settles and the world takes stock, one thing is certain. The war in Ukraine has entered a new and unpredictable chapter, with consequences that will shape the future for years to come. To truly grasp the ferocity of last night's events, we must first step back and understand the relentless pressure that had been building for weeks. The darkness was shattered by the thunder of missile strikes, explosions illuminating the sky in a grim spectacle that has become all too familiar for millions of Ukrainians. The pain that preceded this night was etched on the faces of those who survived. Families huddled in basements, children clinging to their mothers, and entire communities mourning the loss of loved ones. The emotional toll was immense, a silent storm brewing beneath the surface. Russia's campaign of terror against Ukrainian civilians had escalated to new heights, with a deliberate focus on crippling the nation's infrastructure. Power plants were reduced to twisted metal, and once thriving neighborhoods were left in ruins, their silence a haunting reminder of what was lost. The strategy was clear: make daily life unbearable, especially as winter's chill set in. With power outages plunging entire cities into darkness and cold, Moscow hoped to break the spirit of Kyiv and force negotiations on its own terms. The horror reached a new peak when a missile struck a bustling shopping center in Dnipro, killing dozens, including innocent children. The attack sent shockwaves across the nation, leaving families shattered and communities in mourning. President Zelensky, visibly shaken yet resolute, addressed the nation. He vowed that this crime would not go unanswered, promising justice for the victims and retribution for the perpetrators. The massacre in Dnipro was the spark that ignited an inferno of resolve. Across Ukraine, grief turned to anger, and anger to determination. Memorials sprang up overnight as people laid flowers and lit candles, refusing to let the memory of the fallen fade. Behind the scenes, Operation Retribution had been meticulously planned for months, but it was the tragedy in Dnipro that gave the final go-ahead. Ukrainian commanders pored over maps, refining strategies and preparing for a decisive response. Ukraine's military leadership understood that simply intercepting missiles would never be enough. To truly protect their people, they needed to dismantle the infrastructure enabling these attacks. This meant targeting airfields, fuel depots, and weapon factories deep behind enemy lines. The counterattack was designed not just for military effect, but for maximum psychological impact. Each explosion over a strategic target sent a clear message: Ukraine would not be cowed. Ukrainian intelligence had spent months mapping every critical Russian military asset. They knew the schedules of guard shifts, the routes of patrols, and the locations of the most flammable materials. Nothing was left to chance. This was not a hasty act of revenge, but a sophisticated, intelligence-driven operation. Every move was calculated, every target chosen for its strategic value. The operation showcased a new level of Ukrainian capability. Advanced technology, rigorous training, and international support had transformed Ukraine's military into a formidable force. The Kremlin's strategy of terror was finally met with a response more powerful and coordinated than ever before. Russian equipment lay in ruins, and Ukrainian forces pressed forward with renewed confidence. The world watched in awe as Ukraine's resolve became undeniable. International leaders voiced their support, and news outlets broadcast images of Ukrainian resilience across the globe. The stage was now set for a dramatic shift in the conflict. As troops mobilized and Ukrainian flags flew once more over liberated towns, hope flickered on the horizon, signaling that the storm's prelude was over, and a new chapter was about to begin. Just after 1 o'clock in the morning, when most of Crimea was shrouded in darkness and silence, the stillness was suddenly shattered. The night sky over Crimea erupted in a dazzling, terrifying display of explosions, as if a storm of fire had descended from above. The horizon glowed with bursts of orange and red, lighting up the landscape for miles around. The main focus of this audacious attack was Saki Airfield, a heavily fortified base that serves as a critical hub for Russia's Black Sea Fleet aviation. This airfield, once considered untouchable, became the epicenter of destruction. Waves of drones targeted ammunition depots and parked aircraft, triggering a chain reaction of massive secondary explosions. The blasts sent shockwaves through the base, destroying equipment and scattering debris across the tarmac. Meanwhile, in the port city of Feodosia, drones struck a major oil terminal. The resulting inferno crippled vital fuel supplies, sending plumes of black smoke billowing into the night sky and severely disrupting Russian logistics. Enormous fireballs erupted, momentarily turning night into day. The explosions were so intense that they could be seen and felt from distant towns, leaving residents in awe and fear. The assault didn't stop there. Across the peninsula, coordinated strikes targeted air defense hubs and other key military installations, overwhelming Russian forces and exposing vulnerabilities in their defensive network. By 3 o'clock, chaos reigned throughout Crimea. Air raid sirens blared relentlessly, echoing through the streets as overwhelmed defenders scrambled to respond to the relentless barrage. Social media platforms were soon flooded with dramatic videos and photos captured by stunned civilians. Footage of explosions and raging fires spread rapidly, painting a vivid picture of the night's devastation. In the aftermath, occupation authorities issued hurried and panicked statements, reluctantly admitting to the extensive damage and loss. Their worried faces at press conferences betrayed the gravity of the situation. By dawn, the illusion of Russian protection over Crimea was shattered. Damaged buildings, retreating troops, and scattered insignia told the story of a night when the peninsula's sense of security was utterly destroyed. The Feodosia oil terminal was a scene of utter devastation. The fire was a cataclysm, melting steel and scorching the ground. Firefighting crews were powerless against the inferno. This was a logistical blow to Russia, severing a major fuel artery. Military analysts predict months to repair the damage. Russian forces face a severe fuel crisis, hampering operations. The attack targeted critical infrastructure with chilling precision. It was a strategic decapitation strike, causing long-term failures. The psychological impact on Russia is immense. The flames over Feodosia symbolize vulnerability. The narrative of an untouchable fortress went up in smoke. Crimea's targets were critical to Russia's military presence. Saki airfield's destruction reduced Russia's air power. Damaging Yevpatoria's air defenses punched a hole in Russia's umbrella. Strikes on command centers disrupted the chain of command. The goal made Crimea untenable for Russia. Ukraine dismantles infrastructure, isolating Russian forces. Each strike erodes Russia's capability. Ukraine moves closer to liberating its territory. The cost of occupation rises for Moscow. Ukraine's operation expanded into Russia, hitting deep targets. Dzerzhinsk, a munitions hub, saw explosions at a key plant. Klintsy, a military base, faced fires at a fuel depot. Belgorod experienced unprecedented bombardment, causing blackouts. Ukraine's strategy disrupts Russia's logistics and supply lines. The attacks force Russia to spread defenses thin. Psychologically, the impact is immense. The war reaches Russian cities, shattering the Kremlin's narrative. The conflict is no longer distant, it's at their doorstep. Ukraine's precision strikes contrast with Russia's civilian-targeted assaults. While Ukraine dismantles military assets, Russia targets cities. The Kremlin's narrative of minimal damage is contradicted by visual evidence. Russian military bloggers criticize air defense failures. Ukraine's campaign is seen as legitimate self-defense. Russia's actions cement its status as a pariah state. The international community sees the stark difference in strategies. Last night's events mark a potential turning point in the war. Russia faces severe military, economic, and psychological consequences. The loss of fuel and ammunition constrains Russia's capabilities. Economically, the damage is staggering, diverting resources from the war effort. Psychologically, the illusion of invincibility is shattered. The Russian people confront the war's reality. Public confidence in the government erodes. The Kremlin faces immense pressure to respond. Ukraine's strikes expose Moscow's vulnerabilities. The world witnesses a dramatic shift in the conflict. The Kremlin faces a crisis of its own making. The war of attrition now reaches Russian soil. Moscow battles a capable Ukrainian army and domestic discontent. Ukrainian strikes strategically strangle Russia's war machine. The consequences for the Russian people are undeniable. The social contract of stability for obedience is breaking down. Ukraine demonstrates its resolve to hold the aggressor accountable. The fires in Russia and Crimea signal immense challenges ahead.